Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show for you with my co-host, Hawkeye Two Feathers, David Null. Thank you for being here tonight.
And as always, we greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite creator. And we continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, and the wisdom, and the blessings from the universe. And happy Tuesday, everybody. And in case you missed this, it's Happy New Year. And it's 2:02, I think.
Yep.
So hi, everybody that comes in. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, Robert. And let's see what we can stir up tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
We got a story tonight is The Boy Who Snared the Sun. Now, a long time ago, I read a story like this. I can't say it was exactly, but so, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's good. I got the show ready, or the story up, ready to go. I want to welcome everybody in that's in the chat. And we're going to get right down to business. We got Crystal Shaman. We got Elderberry is in the house, and thank you for posting that to Messenger. And Lucky Stone, he says, Happy Tribal Tuesday. I love that saying. Happy Tribal Tuesday. And Witchy Moon has come to join us. Thank you. Yes, Tuesday 2:02. Hey, we got on time. Sort of on time. Anyway, we're good. I'm glad out of all the channels from that you could pick tonight, you are joining us here. I mean, for God's sakes, you could be watching Scotty Roberts, or you could be watching what's that guy, the truth guy, or whatever his name is, the meditation guy, and or you could be watching who knows what on some weird channel somewhere. But you've come here to join us on our night, where we look into the history of Native Americans, the legends, the mountain men, and today we're going to be talking part 2 of James Hobbs. And
don't forget them pioneers, them pioneer folk.
that's right. They were right there, arm in arm. And there's Scotty Boy. Thank you for joining us tonight. And of course, they were there doing their thing, settling America as right where you and I live, somewhere out here, no matter where it was all undiscovered country at one point in time. And somebody had to chop down the trees and build the houses and pave the roads and put up the power lines to give us this wonderful life that we have today. And yeah, so we'll jump right into all of this in just a second, or as I can find my stuff. But oh, come on. Just when I want to get into it, then this whole thing, the computer is doing its own thing. I don't know why. Don't you hate it when that does that stuff? It just starts moving around on its own. But anyway, we're going to talk about the second part of James Hobbs. One interesting guy and I'm going to hold out for the last part. Is a quirky part about his death. Oh my goodness. It is a doozy, so stick with us. And tonight we're not telling the story of a man who set out to be famous. We're telling a story of a man who lived so far out on the edge of history that survival itself became an achievement. Put it that way. James Hobbs lived between two worlds, between cultures, between nations, and between ways of life that were colliding hard in the 19th century American West. He wasn't a general, he wasn't a politician, and he wasn't writing history from a safe distance. He was living inside it, just like we all are today, one decision at a time. And that's right. We are probably living in history, and we'll look back on this years to come saying, oh my goodness. But Hobbs spent his years among the native tribes, especially the Comanche. Remember in our first part, he was not a visitor. He was captured and became one of them for about 4 years. So he started out as a trapper, but he ended up a prisoner. And he lived with them. He learned their language and adopted their customs. And because part of their world, he spoke English and Spanish fluently and learned at least five native languages. Not for show, but because language was survival. For years, 4 years, Hobbs lived with the Comanche. During that time, he married and had a child. That we talked about in part one. And this part of his life was temporary, though, and it was real. And he eventually left it, and it wasn't a clean break because he kept going back. It meant he had to leave behind his wife and child because the natives they kind of gave him a choice, either here or there. You can't take her with you, but we don't. You either come back or whatever. It was kind of weird, but he kind of bebopped in and out. When he returned to the wider frontier world, the Southwest was boiling over, and we talked about Mexico and the United States last week. We're moving towards open war. Borders meant little on that ground. Armies marched through land already inhabited by native peoples who had to say and no say in their treaties signed far away, especially in Washington, D.C. Of course, promises were made and promises were broken in those days. And the natives didn't understand a lot of the writing in fanciful terms. I mean, heck, most of us can't even comprehend lawyer talk in the first place, unless you're a lawyer. So Hobbs became the exact kind of man this chaos demanded. A scout, he was an interpreter, a guide, and an intermediary. He could move between the cultures, understand the intentions, and survive where others couldn't. And during the Mexican-American War, he worked around military operations, witnessed firsthand the confusion, violence, and poor leadership that plagued much of the conflict. After the war, Hobbs didn't find peace. He found work. Of course, we all have to work if you want to do anything. He hauled goods across dangerous country. He guided expeditions through hostile terrain. He drove stagecoaches carrying silver, mail, and passengers through regions infested with robbers and bandits.
Now, how old was he at this time
I
after
would
the war?
say he's about between 40 and 50 at this point when he's driving the stages, I would say.
So back in those days, though, that was considered he was getting elderly.
Yes. Yeah, he only lived to be what they say about 61. So, after he did the trapping when he was young, close in his 20s, that's when most of the guys signed up, and right around 20. And then, of course, you move on. He was captured by the Indians for 4 years. So you add that on. So that puts him up at, say, 24, 25, give or take. And then, he starts in, doing some more trading. He had that adventure, and then the Mexican-American War. And I imagine that at least was a couple of years or so, maybe 2-3 years. It's hard to put it all together. I got a timeline here somewhere. But let me finish what we're going to be talking about tonight. Well, as he went through, so he battled robbers and bandits while he was on these stages, while they were being attacked. Travelers were stripped or killed. Oh my gosh. Survival often came down to judgment, knowing when to stand your ground and when to let go of everything in your life. Of course, when you're being robbed at gunpoint, I guess everything is better than losing your life. Hobbs hunted to eat. Remember, he's a mountain man. He fought when forced, and he buried friends, both human and animal. He faced grizzlies, robbers, hostile terrain, and desperate men. Yet throughout his writing, there was no boasting. No exaggeration, just plain recounting of what happened and what it took to get through. Now, the book I'm referring to here is this one right here. It is James Hobbs, Wildlife in the Far West, Personal Adventure of a Border Mountain Man. And this is where I'm getting a lot of this from. So if you want to look that up and get your own book, you go right ahead. It's a very good read. In the final chapter of his life, Hobbs reflects on what he's done. He admits his life was dangerous, imperfect, and often brutal. But he also knew he saved lives. He knew when to walk away from violence, and eventually he did something rare for a man of his time. He stopped wandering. He returned to California and um, took some stock to raise, and he chose a quieter life after decades of danger. James Hobbs didn't conquer the frontier, he endured it. And tonight we'll tell his story, not because it's clean or heroic, but because it's honest. And history isn't just made by famous names, it's made by men like Hobbs, who walked the long road, paid the price, and left us a record of what it really cost to live in those days. So, now we're gonna do the timeline part, because you were asking about that, right? So he was born in the United States. Some of those frontier guys were born in other countries and they came here, but he was born in the United States. Between the 1830s and 40s, he travels west, lives for 4 years among the Comanche. He learns their language, marries and has a child, and becomes deeply familiar with the native life and culture. By the mid-1840s, Hobbs leaves the Comanche and returns to the frontier trade and guiding. He works hauling goods and serving as an interpreter. We know that interpreters from many episodes before are very important. If you could interpret, you could speak more than one language, you're in. But in between 1846 and 48, there was the Mexican-American War, which Hobbs works as a scout and an interpreter during the war. He witnesses Mexican military operations under Santa Anna and the instability of the borderlands. I'm really surprised that he didn't end up at the Alamo. I really am. But apparently he didn't. He wasn't there at the time. Late in the 1840s to 1860s, after the war, Hobbs becomes a professional guide and a stagecoach driver. He transports silver, mail, and passengers through dangerous territory. He survives robberies and attacks in extreme conditions. Well, in his later years, he withdraws from most of the dangerous work, and he reflects on his life and writes his account from memory, not from his journals. So that's how we get the book. Which most of these guys that we've talked about, the way they got famous is because they wrote down their adventures. They had somebody else write them down, and it got passed down. They turned them into books or dime novels or whatever it was. But that's kind of where it all boils down to, is the writings. I imagine there was many, many more famous guys out there, but we know very little about them because they didn't write anything down. They were just footnotes on somebody's newspaper or footnote on somebody else's book. So anyway, we are going to talk about that. So what do you think of all of this? You got any thoughts?
Yeah, there doesn't say much about what he did during the war, does it?
Yeah, he was a scout and an interpreter. Remember in our
the Civil War.
He was the what? The
Civil War.
Oh, the Civil War. I don't think he had a lot going on during the Civil War because he was out west. You know what I'm saying?
So he missed the war, that particular war, because he was out west. He was,
No, he didn't actually. I shouldn't say that. Stop right there. He didn't make it to the Civil War. That's the point. He didn't make it that long. We're talking 1830s and 40s. Right?
Well, that's why I asked how old he was, because.
Okay, so let's get back to how old he was. We don't know exactly what age he was at these times, but
when was he born?
He was born in the early 1800s. There's just no recount of exactly when he was born. Uh, just early 1800s. He did.
Okay.
Uh, so where am I got here? Okay, so um, he I think he was probably born in the early. They said he was about 61 when he passed away. Okay, so I was digging for information on him, and I came up with, when did he die and how did he die, right?
Yeah, well, see, that's at the age of 61. If he was born in 1805, then the Civil War would have been going on at the time he died, or he died right after.
Yeah.
61
Oh, it says
years,
here. Yeah.
1860,
It
so.
says I've gotten different conflicting um, ages with
But he was,
him.
but he was in California nonetheless, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He went west. No, he was born in the east and went west. I think he
Right.
was.
But I mean, at the time of his death, he was in California.
No, he was not. So let me add to some of this. So let me probably straighten things out. So in the one research I did, it said they didn't know when he was born exactly, just the early 1800s. But when I looked up some other sources, it says he was born around 1819. So there you go. He died on February 22nd, 1880. So he did make it to the Civil War, but
Oh,
I
okay. Yeah, really.
don't know where it was, but it says in the final years of him, following a career as a mountain man and traveling lecturer, he was committed to an asylum in Cincinnati in 1878 and later moved to the National Soldiers Home in Dayton, Ohio, shortly before his death. But then it also says, you see, this is why is see when people don't keep good track of stuff. It says it's also um, it suggests that he might have lived all the way to 1897, but historical records from the National Soldiers Home and standard biographical entries for Comanche Jim confirm his death in 1880. So we just don't know. I mean, back then I don't know if they really kept that great of records. So
No, and a lot of places burned down too.
yeah,
So that's interesting. I was born in Cincinnati and lived in Dayton, so that's he was in an asylum. An asylum.
yeah. So you want to
Hmm.
know the story about that, right? Well,
Well,
I
see,
see the
well,
book.
an asylum, he could have been wounded and couldn't walk and couldn't take care of himself, and he might not have had any nurses. So, an asylum could have been an old folks' home in a way. So,
No, wasn't that at all. Wrong guess.
what?
Wrong guess. Anyway, says Lucky's right on top of it. Captain James Hobbs from 1819 and 1880, and he was known as Comanche Jim. Yes. Okay. Very good job. Thank you. I looked up his gravestone, he said, and the guess is from the guy who made his gravestone. Yeah, there we go. The guy who made up his gravestone figured out the dates. I guess that works. Um,
Well, so then
you
he
were
died
wrong.
in Ohio.
Yes. So he died in Dayton, Ohio. But I had to follow up on this because I'm like, what do you mean he went to an asylum? Like you said, I thought the same thing as well, but he was only 61, they are saying, which doesn't seem right. Seems like he was older than that. So listen to this. James Hobbs was committed to a Cincinnati, Ohio insane asylum in January 1878 after he began making baseless claims during his public lectures. which he was giving public lectures, that he was the great grandson of Shawnee leader Tecumseh. Go figure. He was legally committed as a lunatic. It is unclear if this specific claim was the direct and sole legal cause of his commitment, but it was notable public behavior that contributed to his to the perception of his insanity. At the time, committed to asylums could happen for a wide variety of reasons, some of which were quite broad, like you were saying. After he was committed, he was moved to the National Soldiers Home in Dayton, Ohio, where he continued to give his lectures to the other residents until his death in 1880.
So he was there only for a year, though.
Yeah, he was only there for a year or so. Yeah, he didn't make it
so
long.
He must have been a soldier in the Spanish-American War.
Yeah.
But my thinking is if he was a soldier then, he probably participated somehow in the Civil War. And, I was just curious because there was a lot of stuff, there were things going on in Oklahoma and Arkansas and Missouri. They had the Missouri Raiders, real famous. Yep. So, but there didn't seem to be any information as to what side of the fence he was on. Now, but to the point that in my thinking is that he was just out west far enough in California and doing his thing that that he just didn't participate in the Civil War. That was sort of my guess.
Yes, yeah, I totally.
The fact that he was in a soldier's home says that maybe he was in the Civil War. It just isn't noted as to what he did.
Yep. Well, we do know that he drove a stagecoach. Let's see, I got a picture for the stagecoach. If I can find it here.
He could have just been hauling goods,
Oh, yeah. Stagecoach driver, which was dangerous work, Look at, you're driving six. You know how hard it is to drive 2 horses, more or less 6 horses? Stagecoaches were quite dangerous. They went fast. They carried people and goods. They were bumpy and rough. It was probably the fastest way to travel besides riding a train. We know the train from north or east to west was connected in 1869. Was it not? Something like that? Yeah, 1869. So, things like that we gotta watch out for, because driving a stagecoach, bumpy roads, wheel breaks, somebody sticks you up, takes all your stuff. You're in the middle of nowhere. There's you, the driver. As you can see by this picture, what do you got? You got the driver. This is the guy with the hat. He's driving, and you got his compadre there who's, protecting the wagon and helping him with the reins. Right? You're riding in a wagon.
And he's literally riding shotgun, because if there was any trouble, he was the one with the shotgun. And a shotgun was better than a rifle because they called it a scatter gun, because anybody that came up close, they could blow them away, versus a single shot where they might miss. So that's where the shotgun, and that's where the term riding shotgun comes from. People who jump in the car and go, I got shotgun, it was because of that.
Exactly. And these things were hard to ride, and no windows in here if it's dusty or snowy or cold.
Dusty. Did we say dusty?
Yeah.
And dusty and dirty.
You can see by these wagons, they're trying to pile on as many people as you can. This one here is Deadwood the Deadwood Coach from 1889. And as you can see with this, you don't have rubber wheels. You got tarps that you might be able to pull down over the windows. These stagecoaches, for their spring, there was a big leather belt that would go from front to back, and the coach itself was like a floating boat on top of this leather strap. It was a big, thick leather strap. Have you ever seen a stagecoach up close? And this leather strap went, and it kind of floated on there. But again, it was quite the ride. And depending on how fast the horses were, fast or slow or whatever. Here, Lucky's got some more information. Military burial, Captain James Comanche Jim Hobbs, birth 10th May 1819, death February 22nd, 1880, age 60. The other one I seen it said 61. Brookfield, Montgomery County, Ohio, U.S. Burial, Dayton National Cemetery.
How about that?
But the military can be wrong, he says. I don't know. Like I said, when you get to records with these people, it varies. Some say they don't know. Some they say it's 1 year.
No, if he's in a national cemetery in Ohio, they knew something.
Well, yeah,
they got something right.
He was definitely in the wars. You can see by this stagecoach here. Here's a guy. This guy is got the shotgun in his hand. So there you go. Not the standard workhorses you would imagine these things to be. You would you think of the horses and you think the big workhorses.
Like the Clydesdales, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. These are just strung horses so that they long legs, they could go fast. That was the whole thing. Speed, speed, speed. Nothing for looks. I mean, these are just not, they're good looking horses, I guess, but nothing spectacular, put it that way.
Oh, yeah, they were. And the horses, they sort of weeded themselves out. They needed strong horses that could run 20 miles, and so if the horse couldn't make it 20 miles, well, he was off to the side, they sort of weeded themselves out. Only the strong survive. But also, there were so many different brands of horses out in the West back then. The natives had horses, and then there were they got to be very large herds of wild horses and mustangs. And so, there were interminglings of different types of horses. So the wild horses, so that my point is there didn't seem to be any particular brand of horse. They were wild horses, as stated. Yep.
And that's the thing. You could kind of tell. Wild horses are usually pretty short and small, kind of gangly looking, and bred horses are tall. You notice these are really tall horses here.
Those are, yeah,
because these back wagon wheels are at least 4 foot tall, and so these horses are way above that, and they're all pretty big, lanky horses. I mean, I know horses. I know Lucky knows horses, but these are bigger horses. These are no wild horses that you'd have got from off the prairie, I'm sure. So let's continue on. Okay, now you asked about what he why isn't this thing working? Okay. It says Civil War. So I put the question in for Civil War, and it says, do we know for certain? James Hobbs was active during the Mexican-American War, which was 1846 to 1848. He was a scout, a teamster, a freighter, and a guide and interpreter. He operated across Texas, New Mexico, and northern Mexico and southwest, working with the U.S. forces and supply trains. Of course, he spoke English, Spanish, and multiple native languages. We all know that. By the time the Civil War began in 1861, Hobbs, well, he was older. He had already lived a hard frontier life and had withdrawn from active military style service. He was more focused on settled work and survival, not enlistment. There are no enlistment records, no pension files, no unit rosters, no contemporary accounts placing him in Union or Confederate service. Um, because the Civil War records are extensive, and if he had been served, we'd almost certainly know about it. That's for sure. Reality, Hobbs, Frontier Scout, and all that, Mountain Man, he was aged out before the Civil War. He avoided formal armies. We knew that in the Mexican-American War. He didn't really want to join up with the guys, at least from the book that I was reading. That he said he didn't really want to join. He'd help, but he didn't want to really fight and serve. And you know what I mean. I guess he didn't like that part. He'd already fought the American in the Mexican-American War, which was a very bloody war in all. Let's see. So was he in the war? No. Okay. If we're going to compare Hobbs to Kit Carson, during the Civil War, it was kind of because he was his friend. Most of these guys were getting old, like Kit Carson. He was 64, and I think he died in 1864, even being a tough mountain man. But the last 4 years of his life were terrible. I mean, he was barely alive. He'd gotten trampled and beaten and stuff so much in his earlier years. He was lucky to be walking. You know what I mean?
Okay, the reason I brought that up, especially after finding that he's, in a national cemetery, is that from the Spanish-American War, they kept such records that he was buried in the national cemetery and went to the asylum as a soldier, as an old soldier. So that's why I was asking. That's the reason I brought up the Civil War. But still, right. His service in the Spanish American War, the fact that they kept such good records, that's cool to me. It's interesting. That's cool. That's good.
Yep. Now we're going to be talking about a new guy. Let's go back, because this is what he was famous for, is this fighting the Mexican-American War. And we are going to dive a little bit into that, and we'll get through as much as we can here, fast as we can, so we make our hour. But this here is Maximilian. We're going to get to know him a little bit. If you don't know who this is, believe it or not, this is the fall of the emperor. So Hobbs is he's not just riding with the army. He's witnessing and being part of history of this collapse of the Mexican Empire. Okay, so we take ourselves back to Mexico during the final struggle between Emperor Maximilian and President Benito Juarez. Maximilian, that's this guy here. He was installed by the French power and was trying to hold together a collapsing imperial government, while guerrilla warfare and popular resistance spread across the country. Hobbs, so you got, and he doesn't look like a Mexican. He wasn't. He was a Austrian Mexican emperor. No wonder why they fell. You know what I mean?
Austrian, huh?
Yeah.
That he would have been like Hitler.
Pretty much. Maybe it runs in the Austrians' blood. Who knows? But apparently they make good emperors and dictators and all that.
Or at
Hobbs,
least they thought they were.
yeah, exactly. They rise to the
It
power.
didn't mean they were. They thought they were.
So Hobbes describes how the war had turned brutal in an infamous decree known as the Black Flag Decree, ordered the execution of anyone found fighting against the empire. This single act hardened opposition everywhere and sealed Maximilian's fate. Instead of crushing resistance, it united it. So, by I guess that's he's trying to do that psychological warfare. Like, hey, if you're against us, if you're not for us, you're against us. So if you're not with us, you get killed off. And you could point fingers at anybody at that point, because hey, I seen you do this or I seen you do that, and that ain't for the empire. And next thing you know, you're hanging by a rope somewhere, right?
Or a firing squad.
Or a firing squad, exactly. And
Yeah,
and
Mexicans, they like the firing squad.
yeah, exactly. So at that point, people are going to start saying, well, I don't want this, I'm going to stand up against it. And of course that's how he ended up dying.
Do you know
um
why firing squads were more popular than hanging?
why is that?
Do you see any trees nearby?
You've got a really good point there.
I'm, that's a little morbid, but seriously, and but anyway, you see any trees?
Yeah, that's true. Kind of treeless area in the desert. Okay, so the opposition was against him now, and Juarez regrouped. His generals reorganized their forces and pushed the French back, and they slowly retook city after city. The French, under pressure from the United States and their own political um, situation in Europe, began withdrawing support, and Maximilian was left increasingly isolated. So, just like we're talking about things today with like Ukraine, we'll just go with that because everybody can relate to that. Stuff lately is, as long as that guy that's in charge is getting funding and material and he's getting tanks and weapons and all that, he's doing good. But you just wait, when they withdraw that support and all that money, things will go really
Well,
bad, really
now,
fast.
isn't that about the same time that Napoleon was doing his thing?
Yeah, I would think so. It wasn't Napoleon like the late 1700s, or I don't think he was in the 1800s, was it? I'm not sure. I'm not up on Napoleon. I don't know.
Because that would be sort of like, well, anyway.
So
Trying to
anyway,
take over the world is sort of where I was at with that one.
yeah. So eventually Maximilian made his. I'm just going through some of this stuff so people understand, because I thought it was important, because we just don't go to the Mexicans, because we're always concerned with the United States, but people lived there. We were fighting these people, and we don't even know anything about them. But eventually, Maximilian made a stand at Querétaro. Yeah, Hobbs recounts the siege in vivid detail. Artillery pounding Covenant walls, infantry pushing through breaches, close hand-to-hand fighting in the streets and cemeteries. After days of fighting, the city fell. Maximilian attempted to escape, but was captured along with his generals, Miramon and Manuel. Um, what follows is the most chilling part of the account. Maximilian was brought before his captors, calm but visibly shaken. He surrendered his sword, declaring himself no longer emperor. He requested mercy for his men and asked that he be shot in the chest rather than the face, and distributed his personal belongings, watches, medals, and money to his soldiers who would execute him. Wow. He refused a blindfold. And on June 19th, 1867, well, think of it this way. This is June 19th, 1867. If Hobbs was there in this fight, no wonder why he wasn't in the Civil War. He was down in Mexico. You know what I'm
You
saying?
said 1867?
Yes.
67.
67. Yeah,
That's
1860.
2.5 years after the Civil War ended.
That's right. So if Hobbs was, I'm trying to put the puzzle pieces together. So if Hobbs was down there watching and accounting on all this fighting, so he wasn't at the Civil War, he was still down there in Mexico fighting. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So in a way, the Mexican American War, he never really left it.
No. I mean, he
Yeah,
might have went.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he was down there, early on, and Civil War came up, but he was still down there then, with the Mexicans.
Yeah. Because see, it says here, Hobbs describes how the war had turned brutal. Now we don't know for sure how long Hobbs was in that war, or I mean, down there, but they were battling him until 1867. So Hobbs could have been down there, well into the 1860s, and if he did, he could have still been up in like New Mexico, running that stagecoach or delivering goods, being a messenger, like, like he was doing translations and things like that. So
Yeah, he was probably still the translator and going through Comanche country and so forth. He was probably delivering goods, and that was a big deal. We talked about how, as a trail guide, wasn't it him that he was leading some guys, and they wanted to know why they had gotten off the main road and they were going through the hills and stuff, and they came over. They came over one hill and there were a bunch of Indians, and it was the fact that that they were sneaking through the hills, and they weren't making themselves a big presence.
That's right.
They could only see the tops of their heads, kind of thing. And so and then he was able to talk with the locals and get by. So that was Hobbs, right?
Yep.
So
right.
So he knew how to get through the hills, and it stands to reason that he would have just kept on doing his thing.
That's right.
Because it doesn't say he was doing anything else except that he settled down.
Yeah, but I imagine after the Mexican-American War was over, he was getting to that age, 50, 60 years old, and he was like, I'm just gonna settle down. I can't fight no more, and blah blah blah. And he's getting older, and and maybe he's doing these lectures they were talking about, and to earn some money or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the lectures, because that there's still a lot of people that go around and lecture, but the fact that he had the Spanish American War and whatever his association with the Civil War, and then again, if he'd stayed with Maximilian, he would have had that aspect. So he probably has some pretty good stories to tell.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's probably what he was doing. His lectures were probably stories, because there was no TV, so anybody who wanted to hear about the West or hear about something, you just go to a lecture where this guy is telling this, kind of like
you pay a nickel to get in.
Well, Buffalo Bill did that with Kit Carson, or not Kit Carson, but Wild Bill Hickok, and his other buddy there. That's what we're because he he was in the dime novels, and then the guy says, you come to East, and all you got to do is stand on the stage there and tell your stories, and people will come and watch you. And that's how he got started, as a Buffalo Bill Wild West show.
And that's what Mark Twain did. That he wrote his books, but he sustained him and his wife and girls. I don't think he had a son, but and it was through his lectures, and his storytelling, and how much of a crowd he could draw. So
Absolutely.
the fact that here's this gentleman with all of this war experience, and traveling through the West. I mean, he speaks five languages. He
Yeah.
can speak to the Arapaho or the Comanche or and so, oh my God. And so that's like, oh, I'll pay a nickel to go hear him talk because he was firsthand, you know. He wasn't telling somebody else's story. He was telling his story, and
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
still a big deal.
It really is. It really is. So, okay, we got to get back to. So let's finish up with this Maximilian guy. Well, so Maximilian was in the front of a firing squad, um, and the Empire ended not with a ceremony, but with gunfire in a dusty Mexican field. You're right, firing squad, because there's no trees in a Mexican field. After the execution, Juarez entered Mexico City in triumph. Bells rang, cannons fired, crowds celebrated. The war was over. Troops were discharged, paid, and sent home. For Hobbs, this marked the end of another chapter where he stood between cultures, wars, and worlds. The frontiersman who had seen tribal warfare, American expansion, and now the rise and fall of European monarchy in North American soil. So again, maybe he was right there until 1867, which would make sense. There's your timeline. He just kept fighting that war and being the interpreter and so forth and so on.
Yeah. And
Um,
they had to move supplies. And so, the fact that he could do that, as a stagecoach driver, as what did they call them? But anyway, they were freight haulers, you know, um, and just they were the primitive um, semi tractor trailers, you know,
yeah,
that haul goods across the United States. They were doing that, but with wagons.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And
So I got
usually mules, by the way. But
yes, mules. Mules were there's two different ways. You got the horse. A horse-drawn wagon was for speed. A mule-drawn wagon was when you're going to pull heavy loads and hard endurance, because a mule would last way longer than a horse, and a horse was speed. That's why they use them for stagecoach. You wouldn't see a mule team pulling a stagecoach. They just don't go fast. And when a mule gets tired, there's no whipping in the world you can make them go fast. Trust me. You know what I mean?
yep,
So
and the mule teams weren't necessarily in it for speed because
no.
most of the time they were hauling something fairly heavy.
Yes. Well, 20 Mule Team Borax still
Yep,
on the shelf today. 20 Mule Team Borax.
I
Why do you
got
need?
some right over there.
Yep, I got some in the laundry room myself. But yeah, Scotty Boy says mules were way smarter than horses. That is an absolute fact. Mules are very smart. That's why they don't use them in things like barrel racing or something like that. A horse, you can run that barrel pattern over and over and over and over, and you can make that horse run and run and run until it pretty much drops over dead. Whereas a mule, you run that barrel pattern 2, 3 times, and the mule gets bored, and he says, "I'm not running it anymore. I'm going to. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not running it." And that's the end of it. So you'll get one good run out of that mule, and he's done. And every time after that, he goes slower. But he's sure-footed. He'll last longer, drinks less water, can pack way more than a horse, and their hooves are hard as rocks. Trust me, I was a trimmer, and man, you do a mule's hoof, and it's like a rock. They don't even need horseshoes. But A horse, on the other hand, softer feet, but they go fast. And Lucky says, you do not want a smart horse. A smart roping horse is great, but if it knows better, you'll be on the ground. And that is so true. A smart horse, you don't want to be rode, you're going to have a hell of a time. So there you go. Well, now we're going to get into, let's do a story about Hobbs so you get to know what he was doing. And here we're going to go with, after days of hard travel, James Hobbs and his companions finally settled into what looked like a promising mining town. The land was rich and the game was plentiful. And for a brief moment, it felt like they might have found a place where fortune and survival could coexist. But the frontier never stays quiet for long. While resting one afternoon, Hobbs discovered his pack animals missing. Go figure. He searched for 2 days before finding them. Frightened, scattered, and driven far from camp, the reason became clear soon enough. Bears, not just one, but several, black, grizzly, and cinnamon, moving through the area. Hobbs made the decision not to hunt them, believing the greater danger lay not in the animals, but in the human predators that haunted these remote regions. The instinct would prove correct. As the party pressed deeper into the mining country, they encountered shifting alliances and fragile truces. At one point, Hobbs describes meeting Indians who claimed friendliness, showing papers and speaking of peace, yet warning signs were everywhere. Not long after his party was attacked by over 100 warriors, the fight was brutal and fast. Men were killed and others wounded, and the survivors retreated to camp, hastily building breastworks from stone and earth. They worked under constant threat, fortifying their position while watching the hills. When reinforcements arrived, Mexicans and Americans alike, they resumed mining, splitting profits equally. Gold flowed quickly at first, $80,000 worth in a single month. Word spread, and with came gamblers, thieves, and cutthroats, men Hobbs believed were far more dangerous than any Indian party. Recognizing
much,
the danger.
You said $80,000?
$80,000. In today's money, that would be like $500,000.
Right. I was going to say, that was $80,000 then.
Yes, $80,000.
Think about then. What that $80,000 worth of gold would be worth now.
Maybe probably $1 million. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So just trying to put that in perspective. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Recognizing the danger, Hobbs and his companions abandoned the site under cover of darkness, slipping into the mountains by different routes to avoid an ambush. The journey led them through deserts where water meant life or death, and along the way, Hobbs rescued an Indian boy left behind during a flight from danger. He fed him, clothed him, and eventually placed him with a woman who raised and educated him. A small act of humanity amid a brutal world. The expedition continued into mineral-rich regions, silver, copper, and coal, with Hobbs serving as a guide, interpreter, and a scout. He mapped springs, named canyons, and identified volcanic ground and hot springs, understanding the land with a trained eye of a man who survived too long not to notice its warnings. But danger followed him still, and one night, while camping and cooking venison, Hobbs and his companions were visited by a grizzly bear. Drawn by the smell of meat, the animal rose suddenly between them and the massive, fearless Hobbs, who waited, steadily impatient, until the moment came. One clean shot ended the threat. They dressed the bear on the spot and salvaging the meat and returning to camp shaken but alive. Another time, Hobbs became involved in the pursuit of Indians who had attacked a Mexican family and kidnapped a child. Tracking them for miles, Hobbs led an ambush at dusk. The attack was swift and decisive. The child was recovered and the threat was ended. Throughout these chapters, one truth becomes clear, and James Hobbs lived in a world where survival depended on judgment, restraint, and the willingness to act when actions were unavoidable. He was a miner, a scout, an interpreter, a protector, and sometimes executioner, not by choice, but by necessity. And this was not the romantic frontier of dime novels. This was a real edge of civilization. So living the life was not easy. People get killed, in that kind of a life, if you know what I mean. It seems like every adventure he took, somebody's not coming home. that's
Well,
that's
life out west, and then as for pioneers, every day was brutal.
yeah, every
You
day
never
was.
knew from 1 minute to the next who was going to ride up on you, if a storm was going to come in. You never knew what was going to happen. You know, if your
Well,
horse was going to go lame, if a snake was going to, make the horse rear up, and and you would fall off and hit your head on a rock. I mean, you know, the dumbest things happen to folks. Let alone meeting Indians, and back in the day, there were not everybody had scruples. You meet a couple of guys on the highway, and they just as soon kill you and eat you, you know. And that happened too, where they were just so hungry, couldn't find nothing to eat. It was either, and some of them folks had gotten used to, cannibalism, and they were hunting people and eating them up on somebody. You really didn't know what them folks would do to you.
yeah, yeah. That's for sure.
So life was
So now that
life was brutal. We don't know what life was brutal.
that's true. That's true. Let's see. So now, as Hobbs gets a little older, we're going to talk a little about his end of his life. So, because we were talking about the stagecoaches and stuff. And of course, you want to hear something about that. So as he got older, and the danger never truly left him. It simply changed shape. He found himself driving stages from New Mexico, carrying silver, valuables, and passengers across roads infested with robbers. These weren't small bands. Some attacks involved over 100 men. Hobbs faced them armed, alert, and calm, understanding that hesitation meant death. On more than one occasion, the stage was stopped, passengers stripped of everything they owned, and Hobbs himself threatened with execution if he resisted. What saved him was not, but was good judgment, knowing when to comply and when to observe and when to remember faces. In one attack, an Englishman traveling with Hobbs was wounded, captured, and nearly executed. Hobbs later learned that the man survived through a terrible cost and confessed under pressure, leading authorities to uncover buried caches of stolen treasure, silver, clothing, and weapons hidden by the robbers. Some were executed, others disappeared into the mountains, never to be found. Hobbs eventually refused further stage work, stating plainly that the risk was no longer worth the pay. Yet danger followed him anyway. He continued to guide expeditions, escort pack trains, and protect families traveling through Indian country. During one such journey, Hobbs was attacked by Indians while escorting a woman and her child. Using mules and baggage as improvised fortifications, he successfully defended the group, a tactic that saved lives without unnecessary bloodshed. Throughout these years, Hobbs relied heavily on his hunting dogs. We don't hear that much very often about them having dogs, but he did. Animals that were no pets but partners. One dog saved his life during a panther attack, and later, the dog died from wounds sustained protecting him. Hobbs buried the dog with care and never forgot it, noting it was unusual for a wild animal to ever attack him again after that loss. And he recounts encounters with bears, including raising a cub that became fiercely loyal, intelligent, proactive, or protective, reflection of Hobbs himself, shaped by wilderness and not ruled by cruelty. Who else did we talk about that raised a bear cub? And that was Grizzly Adams, believe it or not.
Yep.
And so apparently that was a thing back then, huh? Don't you think? I mean, this is the second guy that talks about raising a bear. Man, wouldn't that be?
Yeah, well, there are folks who live in the outback and live in the woods now, and that put out food, and there are wolves and possums and all kinds of critters. There's one person who's been feeding a badger of all things.
Holy mackerel.
Like that's what I said. You got to be kidding. She stayed away, but the badger would come up and, but so the fact that animals and people, have adopted each other over the years. So the more somebody was stable, if they lived in a cabin, it was easier for them to be friends with stuff in the neighborhood. Squirrels, feeding squirrels and the birds and whatever, So,
Yep.
But anywho, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's finish this out here. We got just a little bit here. So according to this book, in the end, when he gets older, he admits he never kept a diary. Like most of these guys kept journals or something. And what we're reading, he says, is written from memory, not as a history of nations, but a record of survival. And again, just like most of us, we didn't keep a diary. We just would probably write our book from memory, and it could get combobulated and dates could be off and things like that. So, putting it all down, he's talking, he's telling his story as best he can remember it. So he signs off that his work is done, that the wandering is over, and then he intends to return to California and live quietly and raise stock. And then he says goodbye. But we know he went to California, and then he, apparently started talking about his adventures, probably wrote this book, and then eventually, was committed for being wacko. Right? So that's kind of how it went. But we're going to wrap that part right here.
Somehow he got back east.
Yes.
I don't know if he would have been in California and then called him crazy and then sent him to Ohio.
Well, what I'm imagining, if he was given these lectures, maybe he was traveling around, because by this time, the Pacific Railroad, from east to west was in hand, and he could have just got on a train and went, across the country that way and ended up back east, where they said, "Oh my gosh, this guy thinks he's a great grandson of Tecumseh, and that ain't right." And he's a little bit cuckoo in the head. Who knows? Maybe he was putting feathers in his hair and living the days of the Comanche or something. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's why. I don't know. I wasn't there. And then they had him committed to a loony bin, insane asylum. And by this time he's
old. A great story, don't it?
Yes. And by this time he's old, and you're in your 60s. You're old back then, and go figure, right? So that's the story of James Hobbs. Hope you all enjoyed that. It was fun researching it and learning about these guys. That's what I really like. I mean, to learn about these people, um, things like that. Oh, everybody's putting in their guesses for cards. We haven't even hit the story yet tonight, guys. Thank you, Carol Herring. Thank you for being in, and she's dozing off. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you for listening and joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed these bits and pieces in this book. Like I said, here's the book, James Hobbs, Mountain Man. If you haven't got it, go get it. Read it. It's great. I did one of the, I really enjoy these old books. I mean, it's really written well. I don't know whoever helped him do it. It really is. It's really good stories. Get really personal. Talks about his buddies and what he did and where he went and how he looked. I like the part where it shows how he really looked at things and his point of view at the moment that he was there. Now, is he embellishing it? Possibly, yes. Because hey, you want a good story, all right?
That's why they put him in the loony bin.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Stolen valor.
Stolen valor is right. But okay.
So for those of you, I've already chosen the cards.
Oh boy.
And so we've got some that we haven't pulled in a while.
Mm-hmm.
When did I pull that one?
Elderberry's on top of it. He's got buffalo, rabbit, grouse, horse, hummingbird, and dragonfly, and bear, fox and bear. Oh, there you go.
You lost on all of them.
Oh, and coyote.
Okay, coyote.
Okay.
And the coyote card snuck in here.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's the third card in. So a lot of them upside down.
Oh boy.
We've got wolf and dog and antelope and raven, and I'm just naming them off. We'll get to them in a minute. Possum, coyote, otter, and lizard.
Ooh, there you go.
So 8 of the buggers. Ooh. So that's a bunch.
That is a bunch. Okay. Are you ready for the story, everyone? Here we go. The boy who snared the sun. Now, remember, everyone, if you want to listen to some of these stories, we have them on Milky Way Shorts, or you can go right over to Rumble, and I got a whole mess of them over there. And if you're part of Rumble or whatever, go over to Rumble, listen to some of the stories. I got them all etched out, so all you have to do is click on, and you can listen to the stories over there on Rumble. It's just mostly the shorts over there, so it's easy to find. There is a playlist on YouTube, so check it out there. In case you didn't want to listen to the whole episode or scroll through to get to the story, and that's all you want to do, go over and click the playlist. Go over to Rumble and check it out. Either way, you'll end up with a great story. And remember, everyone, wait a minute. If you want, you go over and get yourself one of these mugs over at the Streamlabs store. Nina the Mystic, we got mugs, we got hats, we got these great shirts. Robert and David with Native American Myths and Legends and the greatest storyteller on YouTube right here. And you can get yours limited time until we change up the design or change something, because eventually everything gets changed up. You know how that goes, right?
Yowza.
Well, guessing is no longer available. Sorry, everyone. What do you mean guessing? Oh, yeah. Oh, I get what you're saying. Guessing. Yeah, because you said the stuff too fast. Everybody likes to guess. You took away all the guesses. Oh, Look at that. Elderberry says, I got my mug today. Good job. You can sit here and drink coffee with with the best of us, right? Okay. So we got the story. You getting your story up?
Oh, I'm ready.
Oh, you're ready. Okay. And it's all yours.
Oakley dokley. So I've started reading out of a different book than a month ago, for those of you who are keeping up. And this particular book is Folklore and Legends, North American Indian by Philadelphia J.B. Lippincott Company, 1891. This story is about the third one in the book, and it's called The Boy Who Snared the Sun. At the time when the animals reigned on the earth, they had killed all but a girl and her little brother. And these two were living in fear and seclusion. The boy was a perfect pygmy, never growing beyond the stature of a small infant. But the girl increased with her years, so that the labor of providing food and lodging devolved wholly on her. She went out daily to get wood for their lodge fire, and took her brother with her so that no accident might happen to him, for he was too little to leave alone. A big bird might have flown away with him. She made him a bow and arrows and said to him one winter day, I will leave you behind where I have been chopping. You must hide yourself, and you will see the gitchi gan, I.e. Siyug, or the snowbirds, come and pick the worms out of the wood where I've been chopping. Shoot one of them and bring it home. He obeyed her and tried his best to kill one, but came home unsuccessful. She told him he must not despair, but try again the next day. She accordingly left him at the place where she got wood and returned home. Towards nightfall, she heard his footsteps on the snow, and he came in exultingly and threw down one of the birds he had killed. My sister, said he, I wish you to skin it and stretch the skin, and when I have killed more, I will have a coat made out of them. What shall we do with the body? Asked she. For as yet, men had not begun to eat animal food, but lived on vegetables alone. Cut it in two, he answered, and season our pottage with one half of it at a time. She did so. The boy continued his efforts and succeeded in killing 10 birds, out of the skins of which his sister made him a little coat. Sister, said he one day, are we all alone in the world? Is there nobody else living? His sister told him that they two alone remained, that the beings who had killed all their relations lived in a certain quarter, and that he must by no means go in that direction. This only served to inflame his curiosity and raise his ambition, and he soon took took his bow and arrows and went to seek the beings of whom his sister had told him. After walking a long time and meeting nothing, he became tired and lay down on a knoll where the sun had melted the snow. He fell fast asleep, and while sleeping, the sun beat so hot upon him that it singed and drew up his birdskin coat, so that when he awoke and stretched himself, he felt as it were bound in it. He looked down and saw the damage done, and then he flew into a passion, upbraided the sun, and vowed vengeance against it. "Do not think you are too high," said he. "I shall revenge myself." On coming home, he related his disaster to his sister and lamented bitterly the spoiling of his coat. He would not eat. He lay down as one that fasts and did not stir or move his position for 10 days, though his sister did all she could to arouse him. At the end of 10 days, he turned over and then lay 10 days on the other side. Then he got up and told his sister to make him a snare, for he meant to catch the sun. At first, she said she had nothing, but finally she remembered a little piece of dried deer sinew that her father had left, and this she soon made into a string suitable for a noose. The moment, however, she showed it to her brother, he told her it would not do and bade her get something else. She said she had nothing, nothing at all. At last, she thought of her hair, and pulling some of it out, made a string. Her brother again said it would not answer, and bade her pettishly and with authority make him a noose. She replied that there was nothing to make it of, and went out of the lodge. When she was all alone, she said, "Nui ove in the pin." Meanwhile, her brother awaited her, and it was not long before she reappeared with some tiny cord. The moment he saw it, he was delighted. "This will do," he cried, and put the cord to his mouth and began pulling it through his lips. And as fast as he drew it, it changed to a red metal cord of prodigious length, which he wound around his body and shoulders. He then prepared himself and set out a little after midnight that he might catch the sun before it rose. He fixed his snare on a spot just where he thought the sun would appear, and sure enough, he caught it, so that it was held fast in the cord and could not rise. The animals who ruled the earth were immediately put into a great commotion. They had no light. They called a council to debate the matter and to appoint someone to go and cut the cord, a very hazardous enterprise. For who dare go so near to the sun as would be necessary? The dormouse, however, undertook the task. At that time, the dormouse was the largest animal in the world. When it stood up, it looked like a mountain. When it set out upon its mission, and when it got to the place where the sun lay snared, its back again to smoke and burn. So intense was the heat, and the top of its carcass was reduced to enormous heaps of ash. It succeeded, however, in cutting the cord with its teeth and freed the sun, but was reduced to a very small size and has remained so ever since. Men call it the Coogie Benguagua. The end. So there. Ow.
And there we go. A diggity dog. Hear scratches. Do you all hear scratches? That must be Duggar.
Yeah, he was in and knocking stuff over and barking and yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because Elderberry says, do you hear scratches? Wow.
That
Anyway.
was him.
Oh, I was thinking that sounded like a dog. Ain't mine. Mine's laying over there patiently, just waiting to howl again. Anyway. So there you go, everyone. Now it'll be card time. I hope you enjoyed that story. A little strange at the end. Elderberry says little strange, but hey. And somebody had to free the sun, right?
Yep, and in the other stories, they made arrangements. They and talked to the boy, and somehow they came up with some kind of split with morning and day, or something, and nighttime, or anyway. So that was an interesting ending.
Yeah.
So
It
here are the
was.
cards. All right.
Yep.
This is how they came out. All right, lizard upside down, otter upside down, coyote upside down, possum upside down, raven right side up, antelope right side up, dog upside down, and wolf right side up. So there's 3 canines in this setup, I see, which
The
is
wolf,
interesting.
dog. I got wolf, dog. I'm missing one there. I got raven. What's after raven? Dog and oh, I missed that one. You're too fast.
Oh, antelope comes after raven, and
Okay,
then dog comes after that, and then wolf rounds up the pack.
Okay, I got her all now. I'm good. I am good. You know, sometimes a little slow. Don't blame me. I'm a little bit slow. We've had possum quite a few times lately. There must be something to that. I think it's telling you to, you know, play dead, play quiet, be quiet and observe, save your life. That's what I think.
Okay, lizard is about dreaming, and so lizard
Yes,
can close it two. It has 2 eyelids, and it closes one, and it looks like the lizard's sleeping, but he's not. And so lizard goes into the dream time. Lizard is the medicine of dreamers, whether dreamers smoke you or dream you. Dreamers can always help you see the shadow. The shadow can be your fears, your hopes, or the very thing you may be resisting, but it is always following you around like an obedient dog. Dog's in the cards tonight. So if lizard has turned upside down, you may be having a nightmare. This is a sign of inner conflict. It could be the simple message that you are confronting your fears and therefore do not need to experience nightmarish events in your daytime. So now this June, there's a lot of that going on in that the stars say you should face your inner fears and get rid of them. Because after the 20th of this month and through the 25th or 6th, there's going to be a bunch of planets lining up. And the best way to get through it, they say, is to be in a higher frequency. So get rid of your fear and get rid of all the stuff that may be holding you back. Another message of a reverse lizard may be that you need more sleep or some dream time. Imagination is the door to all new ideas. In one sense, lizard is insisting that you look to your imagination for new experiences and do it with a higher vibration. So the next one up is otter, which we have not had in a while. Otter is about woman medicine, okay? And if the otter is upside down, it may be that you may be running from one idea to another without focus. Hmm. So this could also imply that you have forgotten how to receive and that you are blocking a gift from the universe with your male side. Fear of being rejected is the contrary message of otter. So face the fear with new energy, drop the seriousness on all levels, and play it life so that the fear rolls off your back. Realize that the only flow is the flow of love from the Great Spirit to you and to others. So, Otter, uh, pay attention to where that energy is flowing, and don't be blocking gifts from the universe. The next one up is Coyote number 13. Coyote's the trickster. And we know about Coyote, but Coyote is sacred. Every time Coyote tricks himself into doing something stupid, Coyote learns a lesson. So there's good medicine in that, except it just seems like you're losing all the time. Coyote upside down, that you can be assured that Coyote's going to be a pain in your side. Look around yourself and watch which direction Coyote may be coming from. If coming from the outside, beware of master illusion. Coyote may put you in a spell and take you to a briar patch to pick berries. It will be a painful lesson. Contrary, Coyote may signal a time when everything you touch may backfire. All the jokes may be exploding in your face. In this reverse position, Coyote also signals a time to be aware of the intentions of others and to look for the boomerang you may have threw at somebody else coming back at you. So that's an interesting, be careful of the boomerang effect with Coyote. Otter saying being a little bit more playful and accept that gift from the universe. And Opossum, which is number 23, all of these are upside down. Possum is diversion. So possum medicine uses a great deal of strategy. If all else fails, possum plays dead. If possum is turned up in your cards, you are being asked to use strategy in some present situation. Now, in the reverse position, possum may be warning you against getting caught in the high drama of your life's present scenario. Close your eyes and dramatize may keep you from seeing the truth of a situation. You may buy into a melodrama in yourself or some others. You might as well play dead if you are justifying what you are doing with a tragic victim routine. Ooh, don't play the tragic victim. And having to defend yourself with excuses, you may have lost the point. You don't have to defend your right to be. That's all there is. You know, you owe no one an excuse. The proper use of diversion is to know when you do not need to use diversion at all. You owe no one an excuse for how you feel or what you choose to experience. Now that's interesting. So you tell everybody to go hoof it. So, but now the next card up is Raven, number 16. And it's right side up. So Raven is about the magic. Raven has been the carrier of magic. And so those who fear Raven do so because they may have been dabbling in the black arts. Raven magic is a powerful medicine that can give you courage to enter the darkness of the void, which is the home of where all that is not yet in form resides. The void is called the Great Mystery. The Great Mystery existed before all other things came into being. Great Spirit lives inside the void and emerged from the Great Mystery. Raven is the messenger of the void. If Raven appears in your spread, you are about to experience a change in consciousness. Now, guess what? That's what the stars and the astrology folks are saying, that there's going to be an extreme change in consciousness coming soon, like in the next 2 weeks. That's a really big deal this time around. So, Raven and the color black can mean the seeking of answers in the void. So, Raven contains an iridescence that speaks of the magic of the darkness. But just because it's dark doesn't mean it's bad. Raven is the guardian of the ceremonial magic. Raven is the messenger that carries all energy flows of ceremonial magic between the ceremony itself and the intended destination. So if you want to send healing to someone, you send it on the wings of Raven, because as you make the prayer, you send it with Raven so that it will reach the intended destination. So Raven in this mix, a change in consciousness. All right. So up to this point, we've got Possum saying, all right, so we need to figure out when we need to use the virgins, right? We need to hold still and pay attention, play dead for a moment. Um, Coyote's warning us, that there's going to be a really good lesson to be learned. Stay out of the way, that piano might hit us on the head. Otter's saying, that upside down, it may be that, the male side of things is trying to block, a great gift from the universe. And Lizard saying, keep an eye on what's in the void, which is that which has not yet been decided on. It's still out there being formulated. So that's interesting for what's coming up. We don't know what's coming up. It's still being formulated. And Raven is bringing us, the magic of the universe. And it's saying, here's a change in consciousness coming. Be prepared. And that's what the cards are saying also. The astrology. Yeah, Lizard was about the dreaming. So, and Antelope is in action. So here's Antelope showing up at the end of this spread. So to take action with what's going on. So, Possum is like trying to figure out whether or not to play dead. And Raven's going to, bring in some magic of the consciousness, and which seems like it's going to stimulate action by Antelope. So, woo, all righty then. And the next card is number 14, Dog. And the next one is number 15, Wolf, which is the teacher. So we've had Coyote upside down. Now Dog's upside down as well. So Dog is all about loyalty. And so in the contrary position, though, Dog may be telling you that you have become critical or mean due to the company that you're keeping. The reversal of this medicine could also imply that it is time to stop cowering with fear and a time to tackle the adversities of the adversity the adversar the adversaries of your confidence if you're not being confident enough. So there's Dog upside down, um, Antelope saying, take action, and upside down Dog is like, you may have become mean because of the company. Maybe stop cowering in fear. So take action, stop cowering in fear, and Wolf, straight up, is the pathfinder, the forerunner of new ideas to the clan. So Wolf goes out and learns things and brings it back and teaches it to the clan. So the senses of Wolf are keen, and the moon is its power ally. So if you've had the Wolf's card, you may able to share the lessons that you've learned. So it is in the sharing of the great truths so that consciousness of humanity will attain new heights. So um, Raven's saying new consciousness is coming. Antelope says take action. Dog says get rid of the fear. And here's Wolf saying right out that it's the sharing of the truths that the great consciousness of humanity can expand. So, oh, what a time we're going to be having. So, there are the cards for tonight. Not bad.
Not bad at all.
The future is still in the void, meaning it is still being formulated. But a lot of things are that get rid of the fear before the end of this month, because there's supposed to be the astrology. The change in consciousness is going to happen a lot easier with the higher vibrations. So get out of those lower frequencies and start smiling, and yeah, good cards. Interesting spread.
That's right. It was a very interesting spread. And, some new cards in there and put it together really well. And I hope everybody got something out of it because I sure did. And it kind of goes with what, the world's happening in the world.
Yes, it really does. Really, really, really,
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like you turn on the news and every week it's something different, or every day. It used to be, I remember when I was younger, it was like, I swear they had to do stuff to come up with things to talk about. And today it's like, they come up with stuff every day to talk about. And it's like big news every day. So it's all good though. Just, be like Possum and Raven, put it together. So anyway, with that, you got a show tonight. I'm sure everybody's curious.
Maybe. I've been drinking coffee, so it might be.
Might be. Okay, sounds good. Let's see what else is there. I'll be on a Saturday night, so you can join me again there. I believe that Lucky Stone will be joining me, and we are going to be talking about Eric von Daniken, who just passed away recently. And we're going to be doing a show on him, reviewing some of his books, Chariot of the Gods, a lot of interesting stuff on that. So join me Saturday night right here on the Milky Way.
Yeah, Chariot of the Gods was one of the first things I read, and I was like, this guy's right on. And because I've growing up Catholic, there were things that I just didn't believe in what the Catholics were trying to tell me, and the nurses, the nuns. And so when Eric von Daniken started talking about what he did, I was like, thank you. Somebody that seems to have a logical thought in his head,
Yeah.
And I was like, in a lot of ways, he saved me in that respect, because if it hadn't been for him and, presenting a different point of view, I'd probably want to just drove myself crazy.
Well,
back then,
Well, that's the thing, these people are, they were, it was like sacrilegious to talk about anything that wasn't, by the Bible or something. And, he actually went into the Bible and said, hey, Here's what it says. And a lot of these people who talk big have never even read the Bible or read the stories, or, I can't say I read the whole thing either, but, you just want to pick and choose what you read. But he goes into Ezekiel's wheel, and he points out things like, hey, even Moses, was talking about this stuff, but the way he talked about it is like, hey, how come you can't look at God? But how come you would die? How come when you have the ark, if you didn't have special clothing on, special footwear on, and you touch it, you would die. So, a lot to be said there. And then again, with the natives over here, we got he talks about Quetzalcoatl, a couple of these other guys, I can't remember their names, but anyway, they came, they taught the natives how to do things, gave them information, and said, we will come back someday. Sounds like the Bible thing. Jesus says, I'll be back. They all said they're coming back, but
and also that, the ancestors told the natives, we come from the dog star.
Mm-hmm. Dog star,
That's
Sirius,
where we come from, the dog star. There it is. See that one? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That we come from. That's where we come from.
Yep.
You can't get any more direct than that.
Yeah. Well, and then you got to go. The thing is everybody wants to stick with the Bible, but there's other places like India. They have books that there's so many books, not the Brahma or whatever it is. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but anyway, it's the book that you get is just small, and it still talks about how these people came from the heavens. They all seem, every book, even including the Bible, everybody comes from up there to come down here to teach us things, to experiment with us, to play games with us, and so we're just somebody's amusement because we're not high on the totem pole, I guess. And we're going to be talking all about that. And I think Eric von Daniken really brought that out. So, Lucky, I hope you're studied up on him. I'm reading the book. Believe it or not, my mother gave me this book for a Christmas present many years ago. Sat on the shelf. I paged through it, kind of, ho-hum, and I've been studying everything else. But now's the time. I've been books. My nose is in the book, and I am reading like a madman. So there you go. We're going to have a good show. It's going to be a really interesting show.
And so for those old timers like me, I've been with him all these years, Yeah. There are some folks that they still don't even know who he is. Yeah. And so it's like, I feel in a way it's like, y'all should catch up after all these flipping years. Catch up with some of the basics, Not to be rude, but catch up with some of the basics.
And he wrote a lot of books, not one or two, but, like 40, I guess. Some of them were rewrites, but, I picked up at least there's 10 books that, all by different names. So I'm going to get my nose in and read as much as I can before the show. And we'll have lots to talk about. Even the Chariot of the Gods is just crazy with information. Like, how did this get from one place to the other? Like in the natives, we talk about Hiawatha all the time. We have stories by Hiawatha, how he came on a silver canoe, and to give them knowledge and create the tribes and the confederacy of the Indians, So it wasn't just one place. It was all over the place. Where'd they come? From up above.
Yep.
Yeah. That's so right. We're gonna do a bunch of that stuff. Joanne says, I read the King James Bible as a child from a family who didn't practice religion and was made to feel ostracized because I read it. I lived through it. Well, it's good to read books regardless what book you read. It doesn't matter if you're reading the Bible or the Satanic Bible or the Hindu Bharava or the, whatever one you're reading. It's good to read them all so you get a very good wide perspective. That's what you wanna have, is a wide perspective, because if you go around with the only book I ever read is this, and this is well, then you're never going to know nothing. It's going to be like, I'm going to read James Hobbs here, and that's the only book I'm ever going to read, and his opinion and his stories are the only ones I'm ever going to go by. Is that really the way to do? No. You want to read them all. Read them all. Make your own opinion.
And to read the King James version, that's one thing. Go read the version that King James took it from. Read the original text, not the King James version, because he left out some Psalms. He rearranged a bunch of stuff. So if you want to read the Bible, go back to the Douay-Rheims version, which is what he took the Douay-Rheims, which is the Catholic Bible at that time, and changed it and made it his, because King James was the king of Scotland and also of England, and he made himself God. And so there are all these referrals to the Lord and the thys and the these and the thous are not in the original Bible. He added them to refer to himself as the king.
Yep. And then bring it around back.
As God, because he was the king.
Yes, exactly. And then to bring it around full circle is that these priests and things or whatever, they went over to the Americas and threw out all the native stuff and said, this book is the only book you need to know. And they got rid of all the native, practices and stories, and pretty much wiped out a lot of the knowledge that we could have had today. But then again, with the winners get the claim the spoils of war, and it's just sad. But that's the way it goes. Think of all the knowledge we would have if libraries weren't burnt down, natives weren't ostracized for their native beliefs, and they would still be practicing today. Think of all the knowledge we would have to go by.
Yeah, and just the recognition, it's like in the state of Georgia, it's gotten a little better. But that's where the Cherokee kind of sort of originated, and that's kind of sort of where the Cherokee was driven out of because of the Trail of Tears. But I mean, the Cherokee, they had their own constitution. They had, they had a lot of stuff that the white man stole besides the land.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, was that a plan? Probably.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be going over that. So tune in Saturday. Again, thank you for being on tonight with me. It's been good. 202 episodes. We'll be back for 203. And with that, everybody, remember to go out and do nice things for people. Smile at them. Be that higher frequency, because it's coming right up. Planets are aligning.
The end of this month, man. We keep your frequencies higher.
That's right. Keep your frequency high.
Get rid of all the old stuff. Don't drag it forward, because it ain't going to go. Now, we'll have this discussion at the 1st of February and see what happens.
That's absolutely true. So with that, everyone, go out, do some nice things, keep that frequency high, and be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.